Hi, welcome again to Just to Farmers. Just two farmers. It's to you. It's for you from us. I'm here again with my mucker, Paul Harris. How are you?
I'm very good, Dave. What a great start. Just to
Yeah,
farmers, just to for farmers, just in farmers. Who cares, really?
justify farmers. That's what we're going to do today.
It's
Justify.
great to be back for season two.
Now you've been on a bit of a walk, haven't you? Tell us about
I
that.
am doing a walk at the moment. Yeah, I'm doing a walk for Dementia UK because I lost my dad to dementia last year, trying to walk 100 kilometres over a number of days, which doesn't sound that far, but I've damaged my knee, Dave.
Ouch.
This is not good though. So
Not at our age.
I'm also recording a daily video to inspire people as well about paradoxes, the paradoxes of life. But thank you for asking. Yeah, it's all going well.
Very
All
deep.
going well, and it's
Very
great to be
deep.
back.
I used to kid myself until the age of 50 that I was indestructible like Captain Scarlet. Since the age of 50, the last time I'm just slowly disintegrating. I've got every little grumble, gripe and moan you could possibly imagine.
Well, of course, we are men.
We are men,
of
we
course.
will moan. So, not like farmers, of course. No. Anyway, today on Just for Farmers, we've got a fantastic lineup for you. We've got James coming back to do a little bit of health and fitness and well-being because you all enjoyed injuring yourself with tennis balls in the yard, so I hear. And we've got an expert today on a bit of a subject that I used to, I'm ashamed to say, dismiss as fluffy, woolly nonsense, as we call it in Birmingham. And most in particular men of a certain age will perhaps be tempted to go, oh yeah, a bit of fluff, just semantics. But actually what I've learned over the last 12 years is that without this subject, life's a bit of a drag.
Ooh,
It's doing stuff rather than knowing why you're doing stuff. And when you know why you do what you do, life becomes not only easier, but far more fulfilling. And today's expert is Amy Rowlinson. Amy, welcome to the call.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Now, I'll let you give us a little bit of your background, your story as to how you've gone from industry to working for yourself, helping individuals and teams with the subject of purpose. But let's start with the two dumb questions that I asked when someone introduced the subject to me, which is number one, what is purpose? And two, how can people go about finding it?
Oh, I'm so glad you've asked me about that question because that is the biggest myth that I look to dispel all the time is that you don't find your purpose, you create it. So I know you just talked about semantics and
Yeah.
it is critical to talk about that difference because it's not down the side of your sofa or down the side of the tractor seat. It's not there. You're not going to find it there. It's a case of you don't find it externally. You create and feel it from within. So that is the crucial part. And that's where often the confusion lies. And also your why and your purpose are not the same. They're interconnected, but they're not the same. So purpose is this overarching intention that guides your direction in life, and it's whatever you choose it to be. It's as simple as that. The why, your why specifically, is the emotional significance that you assign to your purpose.
ooh, say that again. Say that again, Amy. The emotional significance you assign to your purpose.
Yes.
That's fascinating phrase.
And it's really important because it serves as your biggest intrinsic motivator. Your why provides you with the commitment, the focus that you need to achieve all of your intentions that are aligned with your purpose.
I'm already both excited and terrified. I've just seen lots of farmers sitting there in their cloth caps and moleskin waistcoats, sitting in the tractor, going, "Oh, emotions." And but it's essential because the world is changing, isn't it? It's gone from a logic and thought process driven world to one that if especially if you work with any young people of any note, they are driven by their emotions. Everything is driven by their emotions. So it is important that if we're going to evolve as a farming industry, that we understand how to sort ourselves out before we even point a finger at anyone else. So tell us a bit about you, Amy.
Okay. Just before we do that, though, I just want to pick on the panic that maybe someone's feeling about, oh, it's emotion. I don't do emotion. Yeah. So let's just reframe that because the why emerges from reflection, which is just thinking about things that have happened. Okay. And your purpose is created through any action that you take. Right. So those are the two different ways of combining. And that's not that difficult when you put it into that perspective. So when you gain clarity and insights on what you're doing on this inner world that is there. And you may be ignoring some of that, but it's actually just interpreting and uncovering the meaning of your experiences, and then understanding what next steps to take as a result of. So that's it. That's the difference between the why and the purpose. It's reflection and then taking action that's aligned with it. Does that make sense? Does that help?
It does.
It does, and I know you're going to tell us a bit about you, your journey to this, Amy. But I guess one of the phrases I've often heard, and it might not be purpose, but if you don't know your purpose, you're probably part of somebody else's. In other
Love
words,
that, yeah.
if you're not clear on why you're working on a farm or why you're running your farm, it could be because you're part of somebody else's purpose, which is for them to be running the farm. And it's how do we connect those two? How do we connect our purpose to those of people around us? So I am fascinated to hear where this thing purpose came from in your life.
Yeah, well, I was definitely part of someone else's purpose. That's how it all started. And so was my husband. We were both working really hard in the city of London, juggling and thinking that we had everything worked out. And then we realized that we were both at differing stages of burnout, and that what we thought we had been balancing and juggling and I guess keeping up with the Joneses, getting the shinier, faster, newer versions of everything, actually was at the detriment of our own health. And it got to a point where my husband came home very late from work one day, and I looked at him and I thought, I don't even know who you are. You are an absolute shadow of your former self, and this is not a sustainable way of living. And in that moment, it was a case of absolutely, we'd been burning the candle at both ends. We'd been justifying our actions, and definitely sleepwalking. We weren't even living, in alignment with our values. So something had to change, and it had to happen really fast because my husband was literally killing himself working the way he was. And so I resigned the next day from my job and didn't know what I was going to do for this new plan of action, but there had to be something. And I trusted that I would find a way that we would sort out a different way of life. And yes, the universe conspired to show me that why. And it was a case of, I saw an advert in the paper. Now, apparently that advert was there every day, but when you don't know to look, or you're not even there in that space, you just ignore things. It was there. I saw an advert, and it was for a property seminar. So I went along and I was, okay, this could be an alternative way for us to live. And I did build over a period of 3 years a portfolio that allowed my husband to step away from his work. Now, 3 years sounds like a long time to sustain the way that he was not living. We call it existing. But he knew that there was a future, that there was an exit plan, and that really did help. That shifted for him. And he also went down to working part-time. So that also helped, which is unheard of in the city, but he did manage that. So yes, 3 years later, he exited. He then took over the running of this property portfolio that we'd built, or I'd built in that time. And that allowed me to then step into what I really love doing. And that was the coaching, that was training, that was really helping other people. And I started initially mentoring others. And then I realized the pandemic came, and I was mentoring and training, running a network event, all in property investing. And what happened was, I thought we were going to take our business online. My business partner and I had a meeting, a Zoom meeting, the first of many Zoom meetings that would happen over the pandemic. And it was the 23rd of March, 2020. I thought, this is where our business is going. He then said, actually, I don't want to do this anymore. So the last 18 months of that particular other business that I'd been running with him closed overnight. And I was absolutely devastated. I thought, oh, what am I going to do? It was only in the reflection that I realized I didn't even enjoy this industry of property. I didn't like it. It was a route to get my husband out of work, but I'd sort of fallen into the
routine.
And it was only when I stopped and challenged and questioned, what is it that I really want to do? And it was deconstructing all the different parts of what I had been doing, I realized that it was the coaching that I love, not the mentoring, the coaching element, and bringing out of people what they really wanted to do. So the purpose then became a key focus. I'd also had a podcast, a really successful property investing podcast, talking about the practical sides of investing and also of building. I've done a lot of builds myself. And it was a case of, well, I love podcasting. This is a great medium. So let's talk about purpose. And within less than a month, I woke up with the idea of Focus on Why on the 1st of April. Wasn't an April Fool, but on the 1st of April, 2020. And by the 30th of April, I'd launched the show. I'd interviewed over 30 people in that time. I knew I had to get this out there and get it live. And here I am now and just about to release 407. So in that space of time,
Wow.
It's been quite prolific. As a result of that, also, I have just put a book into production. So it's currently being published. It will be published at the end of this year. So late October, talking about this topic of purpose. And we might have some time to talk about that book later because it's quite
Yeah.
Can I ask you a couple of questions about this?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of just a few things you said there. And if anyone's listening or watching this, as you say, sitting in a tractor or wherever they are on a farm, there's a couple of phrases you referred to. Keeping up with the Joneses, you said, was one of the pressures sometimes in the corporate world. And I think it's fair to say, if anyone listening, the farming industry is not dissimilar. We spend a lot of time talking to each other and comparing ourselves with each other, and there can be that pressure to keep up. Well, somebody else is doing something, so somebody else is making investments, somebody else is cutting their costs. I need to be doing the same sort of thing. So again, I think farmers can resonate with that. And burning the candle at both ends. All you farmers out there are going, we know what that feels like, because we have long days, particularly if it's seasonal, as we're coming up to harvest in arable terms at the end of the summer. You know, they work 10, 12 hours a day. And then the exit plan. You know, what is the exit plan for us? For many of us in farming, it's what is the succession plan? Is it our children? If we don't have children working on our farm, how are we going to? So I think there's a real similarity with your journey through the corporate world. And often people think, well, farming is different, but actually it isn't. And there are people out there probably saying, well, you know, yes, I've got the practical side of how to farm, but what's the meaning of it for me? So have you found meaning in the work that you're doing now? You say, you know, you're now doing hopefully what you enjoy and love, but how did you find that meaning and purpose in what you're now doing?
Yeah, it was definitely a process, Paul. It was a case of understanding that this burning the candle at both ends was not sustainable, and that it had been the norm to work that way. And so you easily follow that way of life. And yet there's such a challenge to sort of change this, and I call it challenge the status quo. It's a whole process. I've got 9 steps in my purpose framework, and the challenge of the status quo is the hardest one to actually face reality, and it's about facing these uncomfortable truths and knowing essentially that you are just living a bit of a lie, and that is really, really hard. But then when you see that you're not it's not sustainable, and that this, you know, what is the alternative? You're actually killing yourselves working this way. And it's understanding, yes, absolutely, switching off that autopilot, moving into having a control of what you're doing. The succession plan is, again, it's about aligning it with what you love doing, because if you don't have that internal drive of getting up in the morning, it's really hard to motivate yourself. Anybody who is forcing themselves to motivate themselves, it's impossible. It's why
short-termism. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And why, when you're looking at a particular role, when you find the meaning for that, when you connect it with what is the bigger overarching intention, it really helps you. So yes, there are going to be things in your job and your work that are not fun. You know, that is part of it. Of course, in farming, there'll be lots of elements that you don't want to do, but it's about the bigger picture. What is it then going to allow me to do? And also, there probably are people who love those things. So it's a distribution of those things.
I've got a slightly different question to ask you in the same angle, same areas. So there will be people listening that say, "But I am on purpose. I love farming. Farming is what I do. I'm passionate about it. I love every aspect of it. Getting up in the morning is not a challenge, but." Why don't my staff feel the same way? Why can't they feel it in the way that I do? So have you got any tips or thoughts on how we can help people to get other people to connect to their purpose or their meaning, or to connect to the purpose of the farm in some way? Because that's often what farm owners tell me, is that, I love it, but I can't get the team to love it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it goes back to that reflection with action. This is a really core part of living with purpose, to understand the internal and external world and how they connect. So again, the reflection piece helps you to understand and identify patterns, and it will really see where your strengths are, where your areas for growth are, and also understanding your values. Now, a lot of people know their values, but I would say more people don't know what their values are. And it's about what really matters for you. So when you can actually align your work with your values, that makes a big difference. So if you can understand and adjust what you're doing and the way that you see that as a meaningful element. Now, you instantly, every time you experience a moment, you assign a meaning to it, consciously or unconsciously. But what you can also do is you can then change that meaning. You can always, in every moment, say, right, well, it doesn't have to mean that. It can mean something else. And when you do that, when you have that shift of assigning meaning to every moment, that then affects your behavior, affects your actions, and it's a continuous cycle. So you will intuitively rather, assign a meaning, but you can always change that meaning. And that's a really critical thing. So when you're experiencing any moment, yes, you can be disappointed, or you could be, but then you could also say, well, actually, there's other things that are happening here. So it's really interpreting every single moment. So when you are challenged by people who are working and they're not enjoying it, help them to open up and see how they're part of the bigger picture, how what they're doing is seeing this bigger purpose. So this particular task, yes, it may be more mundane, but look how key it is for us to do this. And then they can value their work, what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I often talk about, when I'm talking about values with our clients, we talk about, are your team connected with the purpose of the farm? And often people say, what do I do? Well, I drive a tractor. That's what I do. And then when you actually get them to realise, no, they're producing food for the nation, which sounds a bit flippant, but it is that bigger. Is that what you're talking about, Amy?
Yeah, absolutely.
Connecting to that bigger picture, rather than, I'm jet washing the combine today because it was dirty. Well, actually, it's more than that. And so how do we do that? How do we get people enthused by, say, a bigger purpose?
Well, I don't know what farms and how they operate. Do they have that as a mission? Do they understand what their bigger?
Oh gosh,
oh
dear.
Mention mission to a farmer, and they'll think you're on about a James Bond film they saw on Sunday evening. Yeah.
Okay.
So the reason I'm chuckling, and I'm hopefully people are chuckling with us, is that this well, you talked about self-reflection, and I think that's so important for people listening, that we often in farming we don't get the moment to do that. It's so incessant. Every day there's something that needs to be done. You can't say, I'll just take it easy today. The sun's out, I've got to get on the combine. It's we've got to plant seeds, we've got to, whatever it might be, there's always something to do. So I think the opportunity for self-reflection is often missed. So how do we even find the time to self-reflect and then think about things like mission and values? It's that, where do you find the time to self-reflect, Amy?
Well, this is the important part. Without the defined understanding of meaning and purpose, and then you will find yourself reacting. And that's reacting to events, reacting to various things that people say or do or happen on. Let's talk about the farm. So how they hold a meaningful significance that is contributing to intention and intentional action. That's how you achieve fulfillment. So how do you take time? You don't have to overthink this. This isn't huge amounts of pensive moments. I'm not asking people to sit in meditation here, but there might be a few moments when you can just say, okay, well, that happened today. What else could that mean? So give me an example of something that would happen on a farm that they would react in a certain way.
Someone's late, coming in late for whatever particular reason, or the weather. Weather's always a good subject, isn't it? Talk about with farmers. Yeah. They plan to do something and it's wet and they can't.
Okay, well, that takes me straight into what can you and what can't you control, and the weather definitely falls into that category of what you can't control. And understanding what you can and what you can't control is a fundamental element of purpose, because if you try and spend time trying to change the way the wind's blowing or the rain, stop the rain, you are just going to do yourself undeniable harm. So that is a key part of just really taking the time. Well, actually, that's a moment when I can go and think about other things. I can spend time on stuff. So that would be a great opportunity. But you can't control the weather. You can't control the passage of time, past events, feelings, other people's reactions. But what you can control is how you react and what you do and your response. And that is really important.
How does purpose relate to goals? Because I think farmers will often maybe understand the word of goal. It's something I'm trying to achieve. We've got a budget to hit this year. We've got outputs we've got to achieve. I've got my goals all written down. I've got my business consultants come in and help me put all that together. Where do goals and purpose link, or do they link at all?
Yeah, I tend to use intentions instead of goals as a word, but that's just more of a preference for me to have milestones. And milestones and intentions are, they're essentially the same thing, but it's understanding how they align with your overarching purpose. Your purpose is your lifelong achievement. It's not something that you will likely ever achieve. It's a bigger thing than that. And the goals are knowing that you're on track. The goals are there for you to be stepping forward, always forward motion. And to achieve those will help you to understand what really means and matters to you. So in terms of, for me, I have my overarching purpose, which is to shine the light on purpose. It's exactly that. It's to help people to understand what's possible to achieve in life. And it was definitely as a result of knowing the difference between living with and without purpose. There's a massive cavernous rift between the two, and that declining health and burnout definitely prompted a full lifestyle reassessment. From the perspective of understanding what your goals are, it's, again, I don't want to use the word mission because you said people don't like the word mission, but what are you trying to achieve? What is it that you really, really matters? You said the shift in understanding that cleaning the outside of a tractor or your combine or whatever it is, well, that helps put food on the table. That is really, is a bigger piece here. It's always taking that step back and seeing what the bigger moment is.
I think this is really important for the people listening, because we can get in farming, because it's a day by day, it's a 7 days a week, 365 days a year profession. It doesn't stop in the way that many of us can get off our jobs. Is how do we remind ourselves constantly of the bigger picture when we're not able to do something or something's gone wrong, that we are putting food on the table of the nation, that we are, a purpose could be, I guess, to be the most efficient, the most environmentally friendly, the most diverse farm. And small things don't then knock you off that purpose, do they, if you've got the bigger vision?
It's exactly that. So it's helping you to manage the moments, and that is essentially what you're able to do is manage every moment, but not from a reactive perspective. Definitely from being in a control perspective, and that's a shift that you can have when you've got a purpose sitting at the foundation of your work.
I 100% agree with you, Amy. You've reminded me of a conversation I had in my research interviews with, at the time, benchmarked Europe's leading psychologist, Professor Furnham. And he was talking about purpose. And I actually paused him and said, "Do you mind if I ask you a personal question?" So, psychologists, I thought they like to put things in boxes. Things are black or white. That's a square. That's a circle. And you talk about purpose, which I thought was quite an ethereal subject. And he went, "Oh yeah, my peers ridicule me for talking about it." He says, "But it's mission critical." He says, "They just don't understand it." Now, you talked about the values. And you said, I don't know if it was Paul or yourself said, I don't think most people understand their values. Mm-hmm. In my experience, most people, I think they know what their values are, but they don't actually ever do that introspective look to make sure that they are values and they're not insecurities masquerading as values. And one of the things, and I'm interested in your take on this, sorry for the long narrative here, but Fernand was saying that it's not just our values. He says the flip side of a core value is an insecurity or an area of weakness. And he said the two have to be used together to determine whether or not something's right for you to be doing. And I said, "I have no idea what you're on about. I'm from Birmingham. You'll have to explain this in Lego language for me, stickle bricks and, crayons." And he dumbed it down. He basically said, a purpose is like having a compass to make decisions. And he said, if you know why you're doing something, you can look at anything and you will know whether it's right for you to be doing or not. And that takes a lot of what you were just talking about, that fear, that uncertainty away from your actions. I don't know, what's your take on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So just going back to that, when you're experiencing a moment, you intuitively assign a meaning to it. And that is based upon your values, your beliefs, your perceptions, your interpretations, your experiences and emotions. And they're going to be different. Every single person is filtering with these different areas all coming together. Okay. And that's how life unfolds. You're doing this and you're not even aware that this is a process that's happening. This is natural. And this is where occasionally you may relinquish your control of this by letting other people's control and dictate what your actions are, because you're not consciously making those decisions and you get swept up by other things. So this is the really key thing, is about understanding your version and understanding your map of the world, let's say, and being true to it, but it's also being aware that you may not know everything. Here's the spoiler in life, right? You don't know everything. There are things you don't even know that you don't know, which always blows my mind. Of course, how do you can't possibly know everything. So it's being aware of that there are other things around you that are happening that could be better. And this is where being open to change, other people's advice or thoughts or whatever is important. And so don't just dismiss things, but be open to what else is out there, but still stay true to your values. And I know that sounds like a little bit of a conflict. So it's understanding that you don't know everything and being aware of that.
I think when you say stay true to your values, the feedback that we get as to why people leave a business, and a farming business in particular, can be dumbed down. However it's described, often it's a clash of values. It's the way that person's behaved or spoken to. So how important to you, in terms of, do you think it is to a team working together, that we articulate some of these values either with each other, or we get a set of company values? I have a phrase that I use, that when in doubt, get your values out, meaning that if you're trying to make a decision about something, if you haven't got your values articulated, either as a business or an individual, how can you make a decision? It's a very useful thing to do. So how important do you think it is, in terms of getting this overall drive towards a purpose, that we articulate our values?
I think it's really important. Let's say you've got two people having a conversation or a disagreement. One person is all about change and the other person is all about conservation.
Yeah, exactly.
Now they're going to be coming from two very different perspectives and to achieve very different things. In farming, you've got this conflict of conventional agriculture versus maybe regenerative agriculture, right? And I've seen this happen now this is my very limited experience, but on Clarkson's farm. So, okay, this is the way we've always done it versus we could try this. And that is the evolution of purpose, the evolution of the way things can be done. And that can apply to any industry, any business, any approach. But when you've got someone who's so fixed on this conservation and saying this is the way that it's always been and it's worked brilliantly versus let's try something new, you're going to have a clash.
And we can understand why farmers are hesitant of making different decisions, because in many industries a slight veer off trying something new isn't necessarily the end of the world if it goes wrong. In farming, using one different chemical, changing by 5 degrees a water course running through a field, these things can have catastrophic impact on crop yields, the income for the farm, and the sanity of all those around them. Excuse me. So there's an expression, I can't remember who famously said it, but sometimes you have to make sure your ladder's leaning against the right wall. So a purpose, from what I understand from what you've said, just enables you to almost have a certainty rather than a fingers crossed, let's hope this is the right decision. Because if you're saying, should I be doing this today on the farm, you can actually run it by your goals and your purpose to make sure it is right for you. And actually that links beautifully to the last thing Fernham told me, which he said, you have to use your weak areas in your decision-making process. Because if you constantly do things where your weak areas, your insecurities are going to keep cropping up, you're doomed for failure. You should really focus on, as you alluded to at the beginning, on our core strengths and the things that really fulfill us. Because if you do things where your values are met, it's serving your purpose, and your insecurities are not going to crop up and get in your way, then it's probably a really good thing to be looking into.
So what's the start point for all of this, Amy? If I'm sitting here listening to us rabbiting about purposes and whys and values, and where do we start? What's the first step? When you're working with clients, what do you get them to do first?
I said it earlier, control. It's all about knowing that there's always going to be a challenge in life, knowing that you're going to come against lots of obstacles, and it's about understanding what you can and what you can't. So controlling the controllables, and that is a case of liberating yourself from what you can't control. And that's really freeing, because otherwise you're going to be constantly filling up your day and your mind with things you cannot make any difference to, and that then allows you to focus on what you can. So gracefully accept what you can't.
I was going to say, are you talking about the power of acceptance, of actually saying,
absolutely.
What's the phrase, accept what you control, and what's that phrase about control what you, I can't, there's a phrase now, it'll come back to me in a minute. Accept what you can't change and change what you can't accept. There you go, that was it. I'm going to get it in the end.
So and then go, go on. Yeah.
I was just going to say, then in terms, that's our first step. What's our second step? Once we've done that.
Challenge the status quo.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
So examine your present lifestyle. You're questioning the norms, questioning and clarifying who you really are, your true identity, and again, making that difference or assessing whether the values and the beliefs that you hold are genuinely yours.
I once sang "Rocking All Over the World" at a karaoke night, and that challenged the status quo greatly. Sorry, bad joke, and I won't keep telling them just because they're not funny.
You don't want to hear David sing, definitely, right?
So you talked about the challenge earlier. You said you have to create it rather than find it.
Yes.
So if there was one thing that anyone listening to this now still scratching their heads going, I have no idea what this is about. I've got to get the plough in a right straight line. I have no idea what this purpose is. How can someone start creating their purpose?
So there's 3 elements. It's knowing what your purpose is. Okay. And we can go over that in a minute, but it's purpose, plan, and then focus. That's the 3 things to hold on to. So have a purpose, have a plan, and then focus on why. The purpose is definitely made of those 3 elements. So control, challenge, and then it's capture. and capture is about understanding who you are. So once you've challenged whether those values and those beliefs are yours, you're then actually looking at what are your needs, what are your values, what are your beliefs, your aspirations, and all of those. So it's knowing who you stand for and how you spend your time. That is the purpose element. Okay. And it just doesn't have to be anything more difficult than what is it that I want to focus on more than anything else right now. And it is right now. Okay. It doesn't have to be forever. It won't be forever. It will evolve. It will change. It will grow. It will get bigger once you take those first few steps. So that is the thing to focus on. What is it that I really want to do right now? That's the purpose for now. The plan is like, okay, how can I put that into action? So you choose it. Okay. You understand what it is that you want. You're making this conscious choice, and absolutely you're using it as your benchmark every day. Is how is it going to help me achieve my purpose? So every filter is going to make sense. And that's how you shape this meaningful and bigger piece, the impactful legacy that you're creating. And it is a living legacy. It's not something you're going to leave behind, especially in farming. This is something that's affecting so many people on an everyday basis. You are creating a legacy while you're living. Don't underestimate that. It's an incredible, incredible industry to be working in. And it's hugely admirable and hugely underrated. So from that, you're choosing that this is how I'm going to define my life and what I'm doing. And so the creating part, and we are all creators, David. A lot of people say, I'm not creative. Look how much beauty is being created on the ground that the farmers are working with. Look at what they're achieving. Look at the beauty of birth with all the animals every day. There's so much around in the landscape, and it is an incredible industry to be working in. It really is a great vocation. So it's about creating and crafting the plan. That's the element about creation. And how can I bring more intention, meaning, and joy into my everyday life, into creating new possibilities and opportunities? What is it that I'm doing that is a part of a bigger force in the world? And that brings me on to that third part of the plan element, and that's collaboration. You cannot do this alone. This is not a one-person job. This is a huge connective piece. And that's what's really important about purpose, is that you are not meant to be doing this alone. It is a impactful way that you amplify your impact with others. So you're connecting with people in your area who share your values, and also different values, because you're bringing everything to the party, but sharing your values, pooling resources, and connecting to create this community. And that's what's so powerful, is that it is definitely not a singular effort here.
So how important is it then, almost finally, to think about how we articulate this to people we work with? So again, I'm thinking of whether we're working on a farm or we're running a farm. If I'm running a farm, how do I articulate my vision, my purpose, and get everybody else? It's bringing right back to my very first question, really. How do we get everybody else? Because we've all got different purposes. So how do we all get lined up behind a business purpose, as opposed to a personal purpose?
So everybody will have a different take on what it is they're doing for the reason that they're doing it. But from the overarching and what this collective vision is, there will be one. There will be something that everyone can ascribe to. And it's about nailing that. So there will be different reasons why everyone's playing their part. And it's that big jigsaw that I spoke about earlier, about where do I fit? What is my piece that comes in? And when you know how you fit into the bigger picture that you're creating, that's how you're bringing together all these different elements. And so everyone who is working on a farm has a different role to play. And when they understand what that's then achieving as a bigger piece, that brings meaning to every moment that they're spending. And it's so powerful.
Yeah, I mean, David, we laughed about the word mission earlier on, and there's the old mission statement, vision and values. But do you think it's still really applicable? I do in business. We can call it a mission statement. It could be a purpose statement. But our reason for being in a farm or working on a farm, that has to be articulated to everybody else. If my job is to hose down a piece of machinery, I need to understand remember the story about the astronaut in America? You heard that story?
What about feed the monkey?
Yeah, well,
No, the
it was the one where he
caretaker.
said, yeah, the caretaker in NASA, and someone
Oh,
said to him, you
yes,
know, what are
yes.
you doing? And he was sweeping the floor, and his answer was, I'm putting a man on the moon, because he understood his connection to the bigger purpose. So that's my final sort of question, really, is that how we get people engaged in a bigger purpose for a business, is to get it articulated, get people explain
Well,
it?
I suppose in simple terms, and again, I can't wait to hear what Amy says, but it's about including them in that creative process in the first place, getting them. So instead of telling them what the purpose of the farm is, include them and say, and ask them questions, a bit like Amy's been giving us to talk about. So, why do we hose down the tractor? Why are we growing this crop today? Why are we ploughing this field? If you ask questions rather than tell people what to do, they feeling more included.
I quite often say, what happens if we don't hose down the tractor? Yeah, and everyone goes, well, we can't use it. And then suddenly the whole thing becomes more important. It's this connection with purpose, I guess, is my final sort of question. How do we get people really connected to this piece of work?
Well, the final piece in the 3 steps: purpose, plan, and focus, is that focus. It's
Yeah.
understanding the focus on the why, the meaning behind everything. And the 3 parts of that is committing, and it's contributing, and it's changing. So when you understand that you're essentially working as I think what I want to say is there has been a disconnection with nature, and what we need to bring back is that we are part of this natural world that we live in. And so understanding how we're connected to the land, and how important the land is that we are a part of. We're just one species that are living on it, and we have become this very disconnected part of it, and bringing us back into what is the connected piece. How do we all come together to create the future? And that is so critical to understand the parts of that. So yes, the mission and the vision are key here, and understanding what the meaning is behind every element is just so critical. It coming down to how you manage your people and how you speak and how you communicate, that is so important. So absolutely, we're not saying drill it right down, but involve everybody in part of the process. And it doesn't have to take any time. This is part of the daily role. When people are more connected with what they're doing, they're going to be more productive, they're going to be more engaged, it's going to be a better
True.
environment for
Yeah.
everyone. People, planet, profit, and the whole purpose piece, they all come together then when people understand what it is that they're there to do. And when you love doing what you're doing, I mean, that ripple across the environment is going to be huge to understand.
And my final comment is going to be, because I'm talking about paradoxes at the moment on my walk. Something that struck me, that everything you've been talking about is when you're lost, find your purpose, as a paradox almost. When you don't know where you're going, come back to your purpose in the first place. Would that be true, Amy? When you don't know where you're going, come back to your purpose.
Yeah, well, this is a way of life. Okay, adopting purpose is a way of life, and it is bringing that real core. What is it I'm here on this planet to achieve? What is it that I'm going to be doing with my life? Because it's very easy to sleepwalk with life. There are people who will live their entire lives without purpose, and they may be happy. I don't know. But what I do know is, having spoken to as many people as I have over the 400 episodes that I've recorded, is that those who are truly living and thriving have got a very clear purpose, and they are really aligned with it. And as a result, are achieving incredible things. And it is that altruistic perspective that you are of service that then brings you the happiness. And so people are so in pursuit of happiness.
So true.
And yet, if they were to pursue what is purposeful, the happiness will ensue.
Wonderful.
Oof.
It's very authentic then as well. Love that. Amy, gold dust today. I could listen to this all day. And for me, the one thing I'm taking from this is the purpose, plan, focus, because that beautifully reinforces the work I do on goal setting, because the why has to come first. And one or two of these things by themselves can create okay, can create average okay, but the three together, very, very powerful. Amy, thank you so much for your time. Very generous of your expertise. If anybody listening to this or watching this wants to get hold of you to take a bit of a deeper dive or a walk in the country with you, how can they get hold of you, mate?
Well, I am on LinkedIn. I don't know if farmers are on LinkedIn, but if they're not, then amyrowlinson.com is the easiest way. But LinkedIn's a great platform. In fact, somebody described it to me recently as being the Italian square where you can get together and have a nice conversation. And I love that image. So now I just see that as being, every time I drop into LinkedIn, I just think I'm just walking to this gorgeous piazza and having a nice coffee with some friends.
Wonderful. Amy Rowlinson, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for visiting us on Just for Farmers.